Okay, can you hear me? Okay, this presentation is going to be in English, so I'm sorry, but the presentation is in Spanish, so I hope everybody can follow along. So I'm extraordinarily honored to be able to present here at this 11th Symposium of International Symposium of Neuroetologhy, especially because it's in honor of Frans de Waal. And I'm going to present to you the presentation of coping within group conflict, the spider monkey perspective. In this presentation, I'm going to present you some data of my doctoral thesis. So my doctoral thesis was about behavioral and hormonal coping mechanisms with social and environmental challenges in wild show-free spider monkeys. I embarked quite a wide range of different aspects of the spider monkey behavior and how it relates to glucocorticoid levels. So for this presentation, I'm going to narrow down and look at aspects of my thesis that were especially influenced by the work of Frans de Waal. So we go on. I will start with the relational model that has been put forward by Frans de Waal, and is basically a model that says that conflict needs to be understood within social relations. And I'm going to use this model to explain to you how spider monkeys behaviorally cope with conflict, and then relate it to hormone or the behavioral endocrinology. So we go on. Before we have a conflict resolution, obviously two individuals need to get into conflict with one another. So individuals that are of the same group can get into conflict with one another over resources, because they're competing over resources such as food, mating opportunities, and social partners. In my thesis, I looked especially at how food abundance is associated with conflict coping. This is on one hand because food availability can be measured quite neatly, but also on the other hand because spider monkeys are particularly interesting to study how conflict is managed in relation to food abundance. And in order to understand why spider monkeys are so interesting with respect to that, and we go back to the relational model. The relational model states quite neatly that aggression is actually only one way to cope with conflict. However, aggression is can be costly because it can cause injury, and it also can deteriorate relationships. So individuals can also engage in, alternatively, to avoid the costs of aggressions, they can engage in tolerating each other or avoiding conflict altogether. Spider monkeys live in groups. So spider monkeys live in groups with high degrees of fission and fusion dynamics, which means that they usually not travel in one spatially cohesive group, but they separate into smaller subgroups throughout the day. And the composition and the size of the subgroups can change several times throughout the day. And it is observed that usually spider monkeys travel in smaller subgroups when resource abundance is low, for example, food abundance. And the hypothesis behind this is that in smaller subgroups, the conflict potential is decreased. And this hypothesis is actually supported by empirical evidence because spider monkeys show a very low rate of aggressions. However, even in spider monkeys that have this kind of social way to cope with conflict potential, they we sometimes do observe aggressions. And the aggressions, as I told you previously, can deteriorate relationships. So Frans de Waal has been one of the first to put forward the relationship quality hypothesis, which states that reconciliation, which we already heard about before, is more frequent in animals that have a good or a high-value relationship. So in spider monkeys, females are the migrating sex, or predominantly so, and males are philopatric, which means they stay in their natal group. So if we look at the different types of aggressions that can occur within the social group, we would expect that female-female or female-male aggressions are associated with less frequency of reconciliation, whereas male-male aggression is expected to be associated with higher frequencies of reconciliation. However, in groups that have high degrees of fission and fusion dynamics, it is also a possibility that the former conflict partners separate into different subgroups. So actually this has been found in hyena and also in spider monkeys, and actually the publication on spider monkeys indicates that this is likely the predominant mechanisms to deal with the aftermath of a conflict in this species. So now we have looked at several behavioral coping mechanisms, and now I'm going to want to make the shift to hormonal coping with challenges. I'm going to focus on glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids are steroid hormones and their main function is to make glucose available in the bloodstream. Because of their wide range of functions, they are very important to maintain the homeostasis within the body. So if homeostasis is challenged by any disruptive events, such as low food availability or high aggression rates, glucocorticoids increase and they allow the animals to cope with the challenge. So in my PhD, I wanted to look at whether coping behaviors, such as post-conflict behaviors or being in smaller subgroups when food resource abundance is low, is associated with a decrease in glucocorticoid levels. This could be beneficial because by maintaining glucocorticoid levels low, the animal increases their potential to be able to react to any additional disruptive events. So in integrating now what we have seen about the behavioral coping strategies of spider monkeys and the hormonal coping strategies, we came up with two sets of predictions. The first set of predictions was about food availability. First, we predicted that glucocorticoids would be negatively associated with glucocorticoid levels, and then we also expected that during periods of low food availability, individuals that travel in smaller subgroups show lower glucocorticoid levels than individuals that travel in larger subgroups. And now to the second set of predictions that I'm going to look at in this talk. First, which is about aggression rates. We predicted that higher degrees of aggression rates are associated with higher glucocorticoid levels, and we also predicted that the occurrence of post-conflict behavior decreases glucocorticoid levels. So we're going, in order to address those questions, I studied monkeys and the Otoshmashetelko Reserve in Yucatan, close to the Mayan village of Punta Laguna. And there I studied a group of wild geoffroy spider monkeys, extremely well habituated, studied for over 20 years. And at the end of the study period, the group consisted of 54 individuals, of which 30 were my study subjects. Throughout a period of 18 months, I collected different types of data. I collected all occurrence data of fission-fusion events. I collected all occurrence data of conspicuous aggression, so all aggression that is audible. I also opportunistically collected fecal samples. These fecal samples I analyzed using a commercially available enzyme immunoassay, and this assay was validated for the study species, as you can see here. And with the help of local field assistants, I also was able to obtain data on the food abundance throughout the study period. So let's look at the results. First, we're going to look at food availability. We're going to look at the association between food availability here on the x-axis and glucocorticoid levels on the y-axis. And as we predicted, we saw that when food availability is low, glucocorticoid levels are higher than when food availability is high. Yeah? Then we basically just looked at the data for low food availability, took only that subset of the data and analyzed whether during this period of challenge, subgroup size here on the x-axis was associated with glucocorticoid levels. And what we see is that indeed, as we predicted it, individuals that were in larger subgroups here had higher glucocorticoid levels than individuals that were in smaller subgroups. But why is this, why do we see that pattern? One possibility is that the aggression rates in larger subgroups during food scarcity, that the aggression rates increase and that they thus have higher levels of glucocorticoid levels. And in order to see whether this might be the case, we can go on to look at the results of my predictions on aggression rates. And again, first, we looked at the association between aggression rate here on the x-axis and glucocorticoids on the y-axis. And as you can see, there is no association. So basically, this goes against our predictions. So in order to understand why that might be the case, we can have a look at the sample sizes and the sample distribution of the different kinds of aggressions that we observed. So because of the way how we associated the aggression rates with the glucocorticoid levels, we were only able to include into our data set 4 female-to-female aggressions, only 1 female-to-male aggression. By far the most were male-to-female aggressions, and we only saw, or we were only able to associate 7 male-to-male aggressions to our glucocorticoid levels. Because of that, unfortunately, we had to get rid of the hypothesis on reconciliation because we basically did not have enough data to look at the possibility of reconciliation. And so we went ahead to look at whether maybe post-conflict fission might be a possibility for spider monkeys to deal with the aftermath of a conflict. And we did this in a little bit of an unintuitive way. We excluded from our data all fecal samples that were associated with any aggression that was followed by a post-conflict fission. So basically, we got rid of all data that could have mitigated our effect to see whether, taking off this data, we see the association that we were thinking we would be seeing. And as you can see, we still did not see any effect. So if we go now back to the question whether the increase of glucocorticoid levels during periods of low food availability might be associated to increased aggression rates, we can conclude that this is likely not the case. And to conclude the results of my study, we saw that fission and fusion dynamics, so the mechanisms to avoid conflict, are actually, they actually help spider monkeys to modulate glucocorticoid levels. However, these are not associated to aggression rates, but more likely to be associated to increased traveling distances or maybe even to decreased food intake. We also saw that there was no association between aggression rates and glucocorticoid levels. The interesting thing about this association is that it's usually a very psychological association. Various studies have found that this association usually is independent of the energy expenditure associated to the aggression. So the interesting portion is that the most aggressions that we looked at were male to female aggressions. And these aggressions in spider monkeys seem to be part of courtship behavior. It is therefore possible that they do not have any psychological effects on spider monkeys. Frans de Waal also pointed out very neatly in his book on peacemaking that sometimes aggressions can also be the better way of making peace, because at least the conflict is being openly addressed, whereas avoiding conflict constantly can actually increase uncertainty. So maybe this could also be a mechanism explaining the data. Of course, this is always the case when we see data like this, that there are some methodological issues which we can go into detail later on. So now I just want to wrap it all up and come back to Frans de Waal. I was fortunate enough to meet him personally at the Symposium in 2018. However, I feel like I have been even more influenced, because this was a very short instant, but I have been way more influenced by all the literature and all the words of him that are available. However, I think the most important influence is that I have been influenced by people that have been extremely influenced by Frans de Waal, and I think this is to show how the ripple effects of our work continue, and they are not necessarily very direct, but indirect is somewhat a consolation, but on the other hand also a reminder to ourselves to always be our best. I want to thank everybody that was involved in my PhD thesis. I'm not going to name them all now, and dank je wel.
No.
Sí.
Yo tengo 20 minutos.
Porque él también se pasó un poco.
Perfecto. Muchísimas gracias, Julie. En la diapositiva donde estaba yo, estaba pensando que hay este pasaje del batón. En muchas de las análisis de la gráfica que mostraron fueron inspiradas de Frans de Waal. Entonces pasa de Frans a mí y a mi estudiante. Entonces bonito esto. Bueno, esto no lo pensaba en la cuando que vas a hacer algo así. Bueno, we are going to have a time for one question, please, or maybe two if they are short. So please, if there's anybody with questions for Julie. La pregunta puede ser en español o en español. Aquí tenemos una allá y después una aquí. Perfecto.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is more about how could you know, or how could you distinguish between monkeys? I mean, for example, you're walking through the jungle and see one spider monkey. After 5 minutes, you encounter another. How could you know that are not the same?
Sorry, it's really, the audio is not very good.
Yes, Anthony.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's more like the other way, that you'd actually recognize individuals. The question was that you see spider monkey moment and then you see that a little later how you know they are the same individuals.
Si no hay un marcaje o si los tiene bien diferenciados para saber que si no ha visto el mismo mono o si... para distinguir entre monos, ¿no? Tiene...
Sí. Okay.
Okay. No sé español o inglés. Okay. Okay, so we recognize spider monkeys by their facial characteristics, also by their body. Of course, they are of different body sizes. They also have different fur coloration, so you can identify different individuals. But you have to have training for that. So I probably needed approximately 3 to 4 months to be able to identify each and every individuals during my observations, like this. Yeah, sorry.
It's not easy. That's the way. It takes time, but you can do it. So, yeah.
Thank you. great presentation. I want to ask you a little bit. A big subset of your data is male-female conflict, and you made reference to that aggression is often part of courtship behavior in this species. I'm interested in that because you see that in other vertebrates as well. I've seen it in fish that I've studied. So I wonder if you could say a little bit more on the behavioral aspects of that. Is aggression then followed by actual sexual encounters or not? What do you see in that context?
Okay, thank you for the question. And of course, the context is super important. That's why I tried to address it here in the discussion. First of all, for the sequence, usually it's like super prolonged chases of the female. Actually, that's why I thought that we're going to see any effect, because I thought at least the energetic exhaustion of the female would lead to some sort of increase in glucocorticoid levels. But that was not the case. So one thing that indicates that it's courtship is that it usually happens when the females are in very late lactation or probably cycling. So we can calculate from the birth how long the gestation period is, and then estimate approximately when they would be cycling. And these chases target one specific female that is around that period in time. So that's one of the reasons. And with respect to what happens afterwards, sometimes the partners disappear, but usually these are aggressions that occur, and they are maybe more a demonstration of the males to show off. Because very rarely you see directly, timely matched that the females and the males actually separate and then engage in copulation.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for the questions. We move on for the next, if you want to. And the next one is a virtual one, so just checking if they can be putting together. Is by Maestro Edoardo Pietrangeli, and he's going to talk about how social interaction influence other social interactions. So really the arena of France de Waal. Yeah, here we go. And Edoardo, we can see you. See if can you tell us something? No, we cannot. No. No, we don't hear you, but I don't know if it's from your side or our side, so. No. We see you very well. That's a very high definition. Is anything we can do here? Oh, yeah. Okay, gracias. Sí, gracias. Yeah, we are going to try to find something from our side. Sorry about that. We could have continued with some questions, right? No, we don't yet, but the yeah, probably still. Yeah, Eduardo, I'm sorry. They tell me that you need to do something from your side. Here seems all fine, so I don't know if you can restart your computer or something, and then maybe it will work out. There is one other option, but is that painful for you? Is that we switch? But then it's going to be very late for you. It's from Europe now, so it's going to be 7 hours difference. So.
Ya le escribí a Eduardo, tengo su número, ya lo escribí, solo que tiene que ver, ¿podrías explicártelo? Para ver si así puede, ya lo puedes escuchar.
Pero lo intentó varias veces.
Sí, ¿no?
Pero no hay problema. Nos estaba desconectando.
Ah, ok, ok.
Sí, no, por eso se parece
Aquí
que...
sí lo recibimos, pero allá él...
Sí, no.
Cosa de él. Que los desconecte de su teléfono. Sí, los quitaba de aquí. No, ya le dije que los desconecte.
Sí, es verdad, no sabemos.
Ya le dije, está grabando un audio. Pero...
¿Ya lo estás hablando con él? Ah, súper.
¿Tú tienes?
Tengo su número.
Ah, sí, para la...
Para el tel.
Ahora vamos, no se preocupe.